Good morning, everyone. Unfortunately, our president, Brian Breeze, is not able to be with us this morning, and so you have the interim dean of the Schneider School, David Wegge, that's myself, as well as an interim welcomer this morning. So thank you so much for being here. We are delighted to have all of the folks from the business community in New North here. One of the visions, I guess the vision for the Schneider School is that we will be the intellectual hub for business in northeastern Wisconsin. And we want to accomplish that in a couple of major ways. One, to enhance talent development with our fine undergraduate program, but also with our master's degree in business and our Center for Exceptional Leadership. We also want to highlight our research services, which includes the Center for Business and Economic Analysis and the Strategic Research Institute. So you're seeing one major element of our research operation here at the Schneider School this morning with the research that Jamie Lynch, our Executive Director of the SRI, has completed. And we'll be taking a little deeper dive and hopefully helping to shed some additional light on what northeastern Wisconsin needs in terms of talent development and innovation and how we can deal with disruption. So welcome everyone, we're delighted you're here. And I'd next like to call on Jerry Murphy from the New North. Jerry.
Well, good morning. First off, it's just an amazing capacity that we're witnessing out the window and with the weather report that you can have an event that draws unique weather. So this is event schedule number 2. And if you ever want to know, if you're trying to anticipate some travel plans, just call either Dave Wegge or Connie Loden and ask them when their event is going to be and work around that. Well, welcome. I'll add my welcome to Dave's comments. The Business Intelligence Committee and the chair for the committee is actually going to be my introduction. But the grounding for this is really kind of an open admission, I guess, that most of what we're trying to do in the work of the New North organization, particularly around talent development and business development, and maybe to a lesser degree around branding, but including branding, is to be kind of always in front of the traffic. Looking at the taillights is not where we want to be. We want to be in the front of the parade. And to do that, you do have to spend some time looking at historic data. You have to spend some time looking over your shoulder. But really, the real goal of the next thing, of the next structural change for the economy, is really looking forward. Looking backward is good for performance review, but we really wanted to build in a bias for looking forward. So the Business Intelligence Committee was really kind of formulated around that idea of anticipating, to be looking at the future or believing that we have the capacity to understand change almost in real time. This particular exercise this morning is really kind of a first breath or first cut at doing some of the work of anticipating the future. And so this survey work was the tool, the vehicle, the partnership with St. Norbert College was really the vehicle for getting at some of what will be a steady diet, actually, of runs at trying to anticipate the future with information, with observation, with best practices, with being able to get good at identifying those points in real critical either market segments, economic segments, labor segments, where we're anticipating change and not always just simply reacting to it. So this is kind of first out. This is our first at-bat with this. And so I think that the partnership with St. Norbert College was really, really well done. The work that Jamie and his team did is really, really good, cutting edge, and very, very different in terms of its structure, I'm sure, even for some of the work that Jamie has done. So look forward to the conversation today. Look forward to the information you're going to get. Start to think with us about how to incorporate this into a regular process, an ongoing process, not just an event, not just one time. Because that's really the structure in the business that is now this business intelligence effort or initiative that we're trying to marshal. So again, welcome, brave souls, for coming out in the weather drama. But we very much appreciate it. I think you're going to enjoy the information you're going to get today. I think it's purposeful. I think it will start to engage the business community around, not necessarily what they're thinking about, but what they're realizing in real time. So with that, again, thank you for all joining us today. With that, I'd like to bring up John Krell. John is the Chief Intelligence Officer for the Bemis Corporation. That's his day job. We steal him on a regular basis at New North to run with a couple of different obligations. The one today that he's going to introduce is his role as Chair of the Business Intelligence Committee. John?
Thanks, Jerry. Before I jump into kind of a couple of remarks that I have, I would first like to thank Connie Loden, who can raise your hand back there, Connie. Connie put this event together today. As we were thinking about this event, and you think about business intelligence, that's to predict the future, predict where we're going, and get out in front of the taillights. So we felt, the first time we should try to predict a day of extremely cold weather, and we hit that. And then today we predicted a little snow in the morning. So this was all planned. We really wanted to make sure that everybody really wanted to hear this information and had to travel in some different conditions. So we're really glad that you're all here, and I think you're going to get a lot out of this morning. As Jerry said, I'm John Krell. I work at Bemis Company. I've been active in the New North, both on the information technology side and with the Business Intelligence Committee for the last couple of years. We just hit our 1-year anniversary of the Business Intelligence Committee. And again, we're facilitating and leading research and forward-looking scans of the environment, looking for trends, disruptive change, opportunities, and strategy. We have a very active committee, and this was really our first research project partnering with St. Norbert's. We also have great partners that have invested and provided resources to us, Thrivent Foundation, Microsoft, and the WEDC. So thank you very much for our partnerships. So let's get to the content for today. So we have done a research study that St. Norbert was the key leader of, and really was looking to get a baseline of where we are at in Northeast Wisconsin. So we surveyed a number of CEOs. The survey was focused on talent. And I'd like to bring up Jamie Lynch to take us through the details of the survey, and hopefully we'll get lots of active discussion, and let's have some good dialogue this morning. So welcome, Jamie.
Thank you. All right, thanks everybody. Today's focus is an expansion of some of the research that was presented a few weeks ago at the New North Summit. So we're expanding on that and hoping that this can be a little bit more of an interactive and discussion-focused section. So you're going to hear from me from a little bit, but you're going to have to do a lot of the talking today. Our primary objectives today are to accomplish 2 discussion points. First, we're going to focus on leadership and talent gaps, and this is a perception survey, so it's going to be perception of leadership and talent gaps with a little bit of demographics thrown in as well. Then we're going to have a chance for the panel to have a little bit of a discussion, then I'm going to come back to you and talk about some technology and innovation perceptions in the area. This is likely to either confirm or challenge some of the expectations you have about Northeast Wisconsin, so hopefully you allow them both to challenge and maybe confirm some of your expectations. This room is probably a lot of high-level thinkers, but this is a survey of our whole area. So we need to think about how can we collectively improve, collectively emerge, and hopefully this is giving you a little insight to not only how this room thinks, but how a lot of businesses that are not in this room are also perceiving our area. Okay. So a couple details on the study. It happened in late fall, so October, first few weeks of October. About 288 organizations fully completed the survey, and it was a mix of different industries. Manufacturing was the largest, but we also had a lot of service and construction industries. It's a mix of small, moderate, and large companies, both by employee size and by revenue. The median size for a company was about 51 to 100 employees with a median revenue of about $5 to $15 million. So that's kind of the midpoint of the data collection here. Some of those that are on the bottom, of course, are going to be nonprofit organizations, and some are going to be some of our largest employers and largest revenue generators. This is not a statistically representative sample of Northeast Wisconsin businesses, but it is reflective of the general perception of those areas. Instead of thinking this as of a statistically representative survey, think of it as a theoretically representative survey. How much do these ideas align with the theories you have, maybe than the statistical expectations you might have? We're first going to start talking about talent and leadership. I'll recycle the joke I gave last time that we have about 40 hours of content that we could go through, but we only have so much snow. So let's focus on one of the major guidelines that framed this discussion last time, and that is the fear of disruption or risk. So when we surveyed the Northeast Wisconsin business community, something emerged right at the beginning, and that was 40%, or 4 out of 10 businesses, were highly concerned that their business activities or operations would be disrupted by 2020, so 10 months from now. The survey happened a little bit earlier than that, but within the next year, about 4 out of 10 businesses expressed severe concern that either their actual business or their operations would be disrupted by 2020. About 2/3 believe that they are at risk of some form of disruption by that point, be it from the smallest to the biggest possible risks of disruption. This disruption came, or this fear came, in 2 distinct flavors. Increased pressure to innovate, people feeling that if they don't innovate, they'll be pushed out of the market, and that there was an intense pressure to hire and retain a skilled workforce. We're going to have more discussion about the workforce as we move throughout both parts of the talent and leadership focus today, and also when we get to the technology part. The largest business sectors are perceived relatively lower perception of disruption, but they still see themselves on a risk scale. Those businesses that are smaller, in smaller sectors, perceive a much greater risk. So there's a sector association with risk of disruption and a business size association with risk of disruption. Perhaps not surprising, but certainly relevant to those smaller sectors in the area. So 3 main questions are going to kind of guide our discussion today. First, what is your business doing today to prepare for the future demography of Wisconsin? In other words, if we're focused on our leadership and talent, we need to know who's going to be available for us to hire. Second, what will your business do tomorrow to limit disruption? And our focus today, what will your business do next year to thrive and limit disruption? 40% of surveyed businesses believe that they're at high risk of disruption 10 months from today. So what do we do to protect those businesses? If your business is relying on labor that's going away or changing rapidly, how will you sustain your business in the near and long-term future? One employer crystallized these differences by highlighting that there are some companies embracing diversity and creating opportunities for young professionals. However, we have a lot of work to do to create change. Overall, companies are slow to change, practicing the way they always have. And this was a quote from an open-ended comment on the survey, but it was reflective of a lot of the ways in which businesses responded. They were thinking about yesterday or today, but not always focused on tomorrow. Some of the interesting findings when we focused on the relationship between talent and workforce and disruption was that company size or revenue was not associated with perceived risk of disruption. So we did not find a correlation between high revenue and low revenue, or large company and small company and immediate risk of disruption. But there was a strong association between fear of disruption and workforce capacity. It was almost as if most businesses are more worried about the workforce having a greater impact than any other function of their business, which is not a crazy concept, but certainly the numbers bore this out. The perception of disruption is strongly associated with workforce capacity. However, fear of business loss is also closely tied to workforce capacity, but fear of business loss is weakly tied to efforts on planning and resource development. This is somewhat surprising, but highlights the general focus on workforce above planning and resource implementation. This suggests that a majority of Northeast Wisconsin businesses are putting all their eggs in the workforce basket and fewer in the resource and planning basket. When we surveyed businesses, there were conflicting opinions on the viability of Northeast Wisconsin as a place to attract talent. A majority of businesses said that the Wisconsin demographics, especially Northeast Wisconsin, are positive for attracting talent. Yet 3/4 say recruiting competent job applicants is a moderate or major problem. And more than half report understaffing as a moderate or great problem. Only half of all business measures and only half of businesses reported that they have a financial return on investment measure when it comes to their recruiting efforts. It's safe to say that there's a disconnect between attraction and a job availability. So how do we solve that gap? Well, one thing that became present in our last discussion was that for most businesses here, talent will not equal protection for disruption. And there's a couple reasons why. One is that the future demographics of Wisconsin are not sustainable given the perspectives that people are taking. If they believe this is an attractive area, but they're already having a hard time filling those positions with young adults, well, the future is not more young adults or more young professionals in Wisconsin. So if we continue down that road, what options will there be to satisfy labor shortages? Traditional methods of risk aversion that focus on talent and workforce development could work now, but will be a severe challenge in the future. Our current population forecast suggests that current business practices are not going to be viable by 2040. Here's part of the reason why. This is an example of a projection of the demographics of Brown County, which we can see is also a reflection of the New North area in general. Sure, we can put an error bar around there, but we're just trying to clean up the presentation. So these numbers are for Brown County today and also a projection for the future. Key things of note. The rapidly growing population are those 55 and older. And by the time we get to 2040 in Northeast Wisconsin, and the further north you go, the older it will be, there will be the majority of our population, or the largest group, will be those 55 and older. But the key area to focus on here is that the 20 to 34-year-olds are shrinking. They're a shrinking population here. So if we're already having challenges filling those positions, when there's proportionally fewer people in that age group, this is going to be an increasing challenge. And it's going to happen incrementally year by year. But if you look at it like this, you can see how dramatic it will be. It's hard to perceive that year by year change, but this is likely to be a very dramatic change. If we're struggling to hire and retain young professionals now, what happens in 2025, and 2030, 2035, and so on? Young adults are the migrants. Young adults have historically been drivers of migration and continue to move in great numbers. You can see here that in the overall migration from 2007 to 2009 and 2010 to 2012, young adults were by far the greatest movers in the US. And in fact, the city that got the second largest amount of young adult migrants to mid-sized cities in post-recession, there's a long sentence there, Madison, Wisconsin. Madison, Wisconsin had the highest migration for a mid-sized city, that's 500,000 to 1 million, of young professionals, young adults, post-recession. Number one, Provo. So it's not that people won't move to cold places, it's will they move to our cold place. And the other important component of demographics is it's not everybody moves equally. In this chart, we can see that that bar that's highlighted with the red arrows are those that are most likely to move are also the most educated. And those that are least likely to move are the least educated. So to put that simply, the people who are likely to move or migrate to fill our demographic groups are those who are young and well-educated. What are we doing to welcome the young and well-educated to our area, especially to counteract the decline? We can't even, if we just work on retaining our young professionals in this area, even retention will not be enough to fill the gaps that are likely to come. So the demographics kind of are the future of this. If there's so much focus on workforce, and workforce is the greatest fear of disruption, how are we actively planning for very clear workforce shortages that will be only growing over time? What did emerge in our results was that there was a new way of thinking about it to create resilience in Northeast Wisconsin. And that was that talent plus training and innovation will create resilience in the face of disruption. When we looked at those companies that were equally putting their investments in workforce development, that were putting their investments in planning, and were putting their investments in innovation, not surprisingly, they had very little fear of disruption. They had balanced out their workforce to also be a research and development arm of their company. More than 90% of businesses in Northeast Wisconsin say that upskilling or reskilling will be a high priority in the next 5 years. Training within organization will be key, but fewer than half of Northeast Wisconsin businesses have a budget line appropriated for training and reskilling. Without the broad skills to train within an organization, how do we plan for reskilling and upskilling our employees? Those businesses that have adopted diverse means to compensate for workforce gaps have taken a number of steps to ensure their business has the resources needed in the future. But what about those businesses that are putting all their eggs in the workforce basket? Many firms participate in routine product assessment from our survey, but few firms engage in routine employee or culture assessment. Hardly any firms make use of perception and assessment data when planning for the future. Not firms in general, but firms that we surveyed. Many firms use key performance indicators, but only a few mentioned that they integrated public and internal metrics on a routine basis to their key performance indicators. In other words, they're relying on data that's not under their control to determine key performance indicators, and they're not integrating culture or strategy as a measure of a key performance indicator. Many firms believe that training is important, but don't have an explicit plan to move employees into successful new roles. So workforce is important, but maybe our planning mechanisms are not as developed as they could be. I now want to have a broader discussion about this with our panelists, and this is kind of setting the stage for a conversation when we get to innovation and leadership when we move forward. So I'd like to bring up our moderator, Oliver Bookshey. Close enough. Yeah, exactly. I said it perfectly. Thank you. Executive Director of Advancing AI Wisconsin and founder of My Strategy Source.
Great. Thank you, Jamie.
Gaps, and I have been able to fill the gaps. So I rotate about
Area CEOs and said, hey, what keeps you up at night? And one of the things they talk
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for a very lively discussion. I'm excited to see what you've written down and to continue our discussion. We started the first half of our day with a discussion about leadership and talent. Leadership and talent is pretty diverse among different organizations. And now, so there was a question about what do we do about innovation? How do we innovate? How do we think about technology? How do we complete that equation where we think about both talent plus innovation for resiliency? What I'd like to do now is share some of the results from the technology and innovation portion of our data collection, and I think this will generate a lot of questions. So the goal of this next part is to generate questions to think about your business and think about how your perspective on this may align or maybe could lead in some of the areas in Northeast Wisconsin as we think about technology and innovation. We started kind of with three broad questions. What's your business doing today to prepare for demography? Hopefully everything, right? Yeah. And then we want to think about what will your business do in the next year to thrive and limit disruption. And this is where we get to that latter half of that new equation. Talent plus innovation plus resources can equal resiliency. Well, let's focus more specifically on the innovation and technology portion. In our results, it was pretty clear that approximately 70% believe pressure to innovate has increased significantly in the past 3 years. So when we talk to most businesses, we say, are you feeling the pressure to innovate? Absolutely. 2/3 believe pressure to introduce new technology has increased dramatically in the past 3 years. So that's a pretty narrow window. And 64% believe competitive innovation will have a moderate or great impact on business success in the next 5 years. The message is clear. Northeast Wisconsin businesses are facing pressure to adapt and change. To that end, most businesses have a finance-based return on investment measure for the implementation of new technology. This is notable considering only half have an ROI measure on workforce development strategies. In Northeast Wisconsin, firms are more likely to hire a recruiting firm than to invest in a new workplace technology. We're more likely to hire a recruiting firm than to invest in a new workplace technology. The most common strategies to compensate for real or perceived workplace gaps were increase wages, improve flexible staffing options, or train or poach employees. The least common responses: outsource, invest in new technology, or rehire employees that had retired. Only 15% of companies have used artificial intelligence or machine learning or a smart automation process or robotics to compensate for workforce shortages. For comparison, a higher percent of companies have invested in rehiring than they have in robotics. Businesses that are thinking about tomorrow are focused on workforce and resources, and have more resources on average than those that are focusing simply on workforce. The talent equals protection approach is going to be a narrow focus on workforce development. However, nearly 40% of workplaces have not adopted one of 10 common practices to compensate for workforce gaps in Wisconsin. So they say that they have significant workforce gaps, and if we think about 10 common strategies for addressing that, only fewer than 40% have adopted at least one of those strategies. Less innovation in resource or staffing solutions, you could say that some firms are unsure of how to innovate beyond traditional approaches to workforce development. Strengthening the education system, expanding jobs and pay, and developing reskill programs are high priorities for the Northeast Wisconsin business community, but few have allocated that as part of their strategic plan or have an allocated executive leader leading up those initiatives. And one very notable assessment question we asked: in the past 3 years, has the workforce with the skills and experiences needed by your business increased, stayed the same, or decreased? In other words, has your available talent pool decreased, increased, or stayed the same? Which group do you think was most likely to invest in new technology? Those who think it's decreased are substantially less likely to adapt a technological solution. The decreasers are less likely to have made use of artificial intelligence. They're less likely to make use of robotics or some other innovative technology that does not rely on human labor. However, those that think the labor market has increased for their business are substantially more likely to invest in technology, to invest in alternatives to human labor, and to invest in new strategies for investment, development, and technology. You could say that those with the current or available talent are more risky in their approaches than those with less available talent. I can't answer why, but it begs the question in the area: is that a sustainable solution? We also ask questions about whether technology is a tool for innovation or is it a reactive solution. As mentioned before, there were very few associations with resources and perception of disruption. Indeed, the heavy focus on talent recruitment has limited the innovative use of technology for many firms, according to our survey results. You could say that many businesses are using technology when something goes wrong instead of using technology as a way to make something go right. A number of businesses reported in open-ended comments that the introduction of technology in the workplace helped them identify areas where they were at risk for labor disruption. Connecting the dots, we can see that some workplaces use technology to solidify their workforce and to limit labor disruption. So how do we innovate to reduce disruption? Well, risk of disruption is associated with changes in workforce composition, at least perception, but not associated with focuses on resources for the future. This suggests that the greatest concern for the immediate workforce is growth, but the important demographics suggest that that may not be the best way for companies to grow. The highest revenue companies invest the most in resource innovation. The lowest revenue companies invest the least. The largest companies, by employee size, invest the most in resource innovation and labor and technology. The smallest companies invest the least, proportionally, not just from a, there's obviously some revenue dynamics there, proportional investment. So our traditional methods of using a talent equals protection from disruption in the Midwest is going to be a challenge. The rest of the country is experiencing demographic changes that are different than ours. The average age at first birth is increasing dramatically around the country. The age at first marriage is increasing dramatically around the country, but we're lagging on that. That's a weird way to say lagging. We're not lagging in terms of birth, but we're simply lagging in the demographic change. Another way of interpreting that is that places on the coast have already suffered, again, demographic terms, a lower age at first birth and lower population growth. That means that they're already having to face the changes and challenges that we will face in 20 years. So if they have a jump on us in preparing for demographic changes, what does that mean for our region? Well, it means that somebody's already done the work for us, and that we can look to other places outside that have faced those demographic challenges, see what solutions they've taken, and we can adopt them as we prepare for the future. Traditional methods that are focused heavily on the workforce basket are going to be a challenge in our area. Our current population indicates that we need to act now so that we can be solvent for the future. One way of doing that is reframing our equation. So as we think about resilience in the face of disruption, incorporating training and innovation into workforce strategies is likely to be a winning equation. We need ways of establishing the utility of technology in the workplace. We need key performance indicators for how we can incorporate innovation and workforce development. And we need simultaneous investment in resources and talent as a shared pool as we move our businesses forward. Technology and data should be a tool for future planning and not simply a response to labor shortages. Innovation and technology can be used for sustainable workforce development. In short, talent plus training plus innovation should equal success. Okay. This is just a tiny version of a very large survey that we're working on, and I'm trying to give you the 30,000-foot view of these details. There is significant additional information that's available, and if you're interested in looking at some of the more detailed parts or having a more detailed conversation about what was available in the survey, connecting with the New North is the best way to do that. And we can think about continued conversations that happen after we have today, as I think there's a lot of interest in this. So I'd like to turn it back over to our moderators as we continue for the second half of our broad discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.